Welcome to the CEO and the Salesman Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Whyatt. I'm the salesman part of the title. Each week, I sit down with CEOs and entrepreneurs to discuss and dissect their journeys, filled with triumphs, challenges, and some good old-fashioned business wisdom. Get ready to laugh, learn, and be inspired as we dig into leadership, strategy, sales, marketing, and everything in between. This is the CEO and the Salesman Podcast. Let's get on with the show. Welcome, everybody, to the CEO and the Salesman Podcast, where we interview Australia's leading CEOs and understand their how they've gone ahead and built their businesses. Now, today we're joined by Steve Grace. Steve Grace is a podcaster, media company owner, recruiter, and venture partner. And I want to understand what all of that means and how it all comes together today. So thanks very much for joining me today, Steve.
Well, firstly, thanks for calling me one of Australia's leading CEOs. I think that's a first for me, and I want you to just take that clip and just send that to me. I'm going to have it play on my phone every morning. Very nice to meet you.
Mate, that's the tone of this podcast. We're just going to gas everybody up, get everybody excited, and we'll leave the facts and the figures, to the side. All right.
We're going to get on so well. I can tell already.
Perfect. Well, mate, I want to understand something really right off the bat. In your LinkedIn bio, you've got all these things, but venture partner is interesting to me because a lot of my clients are talking about venture and raising capital. Let's jump into that. So, tell me, what are your top tips for people trying to raise capital?
So, do you want me to explain what a venture partner is? Because a lot of people don't know. I actually have a lot of people ask me, what does that mean?
Hit me.
Look, essentially, a venture partner helps that business, which in this case is a VC fund. There's also another company you'll see it just for your own amusement. Tomorrow, there's an announcement of me becoming a venture partner of another business tomorrow because I've got so much time. Right?
Well, what else are you going to do with your hour between 2 and 2:30 on an extra every other Thursday, right?
And that's in the morning, yeah. I think the venture partner essentially just helps raise money for whatever that venture fund might be. What are my tips for helping raising money? This is an interesting question because it really depends on where you are in that journey. Are you pre-seed, are you seed, are you Series A, are you angels, are you, all those kinds of things. And actually just spent the last 8 weeks as a mentor with a business called Stride Equity. And Stride Equity help teach founders how to raise money. And one of the things I did is, we have a lot of studios here in Nudge Productions, and we have this awesome green room, right? It's just the coolest. You can do anything in this green room. And we had them in the green room presenting, and then I don't want to use the word critique, but more advising them on how to get that better. And then they go and practice, and they come back. And then from the week 1 to week 8, their presentations were just mind-blowingly different.
So what did you focus on in those presentations?
Look, I think it's really about a lot of slide decks and presentations have a lot of useless information, and they're not looking at it from the viewpoint of an investor. There are certain things investors want to know, and you need to come out with them, and you need to double down on them. It's some really simple things like if you're ever in a pitch competition, you will have been introduced, and yet everybody spends, and you've got 4 minutes. They might spend 20 seconds of that 4 minutes introducing themselves, which is a waste of time because someone just did that. So it can be things as simple as that. But I guess it's things like, what have you achieved? Where are you going to be spending the money is something that people nearly always miss. The size of the market is something everyone always harps on about, which is really irrelevant at this sort of stage.
Those giant total addressable market figures of $16 trillion.
Yeah. Well, no one cares. Like the investor doesn't care. He wants to know what you're going to do with his money or her money, how you're going to spend it, who you are, basically who your team are, what you've done so far, how you're going to get to profitability. There's a whole bunch of this. I won't go through them now because then it will be half an hour, but and I'm happy to anyone to reach out to me and ask me, and I can give them a list. But there's a list of key things that investors want to hear. And if you focus on that and you jazz it up and you put some personality in and you don't read your slides and you don't have too much information on your slides, you'll probably have a much better hit rate.
So when you say not too much information, is it the old standard of, maybe 1, maybe 2 points in a slide? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, sometimes you've got these people who put these huge paragraphs of information, and then if you watch the audience, they're squinting trying to read it. They're not listening to what you're saying, right? So you're missing the opportunity. We do at Nudge, we do fundraising videos. We help people create videos to go alongside their slide decks, which they can then email over. And so getting that information across when you can speak about it is such a privilege because it's much easier to articulate something through voice than it is through a slide. So you really want to maximize your opportunity.
Oh, very cool. Okay, thank you for that. So, in your past career as a recruiter, and your current one is helping brands and businesses scale up. How has your sales, I guess, experience flowed through your entire career?
I'm still doing recruitment. I've never stopped. I don't do it as much. That's true.
Yep.
Look, I think recruitment is one of the most ultimate sales jobs. If you think about it, you start by having to sell yourself. You have to get someone to be interested to use you to recruit a role. You then take that role and then you have to go and sell that to a whole bunch of candidates. When you get those candidates on board, you then have to take those candidates and sell them back to the client again. When the client's met them, you've then got to sell the offer back to the right candidate. It's this continuous stream of sales. I don't think there's an environment where you sell so many different times. You also sell the most unreliable product in the world in a person on either side. You have no idea what your client's going to do in an interview or say, and you've got no idea what your candidate's going to do. So you're selling something you can't control. So from a sales perspective, I think recruitment is way, way more difficult than nearly anything else because there's just so many stages and so many variables.
So you said that sometimes you don't know what the recruit or the recruiter are going to say. Have you got any interesting stories or situations where that's gone sideways?
So many. I'll try and pick out some of the more entertaining ones as opposed to the sad one. Look, I've had a candidate go into an interview and try and crush a hand in a handshake, like as a power play. And that's really a minimum thing. I've had people smash windows. I've had people throw chairs. I've had people throw punches. I've had clients ask the most inappropriate questions, which we won't talk about on your show, like things you wouldn't even believe. It's just endless. Like you don't know what either of them are going to have gone through that morning before the interview, what they're going to say. And I reckon probably once a fortnight, you go, what? Because someone's gone and said something just totally ridiculous.
How does somebody get to a point where they throw a chair? Like, come on.
So
you're going to be pretty wound up. Like, there's got to be an escalation, right?
Well, first, this was back in London, and people are a lot more tense in London because it's always raining and cold and miserable, which is why we can live here now. But essentially, this was. When I was in London, I did investment banking, IT recruitment, which is an interesting combination, right? So I worked in Cannon Street in the city of London, which is a hedonistic place and a very high stress place to say the least. And we had this candidate who'd gone in, and it was a panel interview because they used to do a lot of them. He'd already gone in a funny manner. Panel interviews where you have maybe 3 or 4 people.
Panel. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, got it.
So he'd gone in there. He was already stressed. It had been really hot in there. He'd got up and opened the window without asking, which one is amazing that he could do that because you can't open windows these days. But back in those days,
that's right.
Could. And they didn't like the fact that he did that without asking. And they essentially told him he didn't get the job at the end of the interview. Right. It was not well received. Not well received at all. He got up. He kind of, I wasn't there, but this is what I was told. He paced up and down. He shouted a bit and he picked the chair up and he threw it at the entire, luckily there was a table in front of them, but he threw it at them and stormed out. That's, it doesn't sound that bad, but it's unusual. It doesn't help when you've worked for God knows how many hours to find that candidate, persuade that candidate, arrange for that candidate to go, that something like that happens. We've had candidates who've turned up as women when we put their resumes forward as men. This stuff, it happens, right? It happens all the time. We've had candidates who have murdered some of their family members and been put in jail. I've had a lot of my candidates go to jail for a variety of ridiculous reasons. Honestly, I've always said I'd write a book, but I really feel that no one would believe it. It's so much more ridiculous than you can make up.
This could be the Kitchen Confidential equivalent for recruiters, because Anthony Bourdain wrote his book just for line cooks and chefs in New York City. He wrote it for a very, very niche group, and it turned into a global phenomenon and launched his career because he was 44, just chugging along, and thought that was the end of his life. He was getting too old to bend down into the fridges, and wrote this book. So, mate, there you go. That's another thing you could do. Just squeeze that into your relatively empty timetable, right?
I did start one. It's somewhere on this computer that we're sitting on here. I think I wrote the first chapter and the content. I wrote I wrote the contents because I wanted to try and remember all the stories because I just touched on 50, so the memory is not quite as as useful as it used to be. So, and then I wrote the first chapter. This was probably about 5 years ago, and I haven't touched it since. It'll be embedded somewhere in the cloud, I would imagine.
Right, there you go. You might just have to do a series of sort of audio interviews and then get somebody else to put it into a book for you, seeing as this seems to be your mode of communication.
Well, you know
so
why?
Mate, tell me.
You know why that's my mode of communication, Matt? It's because I'm massively dyslexic. So when I write an email, and my staff will, my employees, my friends, my partners, everyone that knows me will say, when I put a LinkedIn post up, I usually get about 3 messages on my text saying you spelled this wrong, you did this wrong, you did that wrong. When I write an email, it takes me longer to go through the process with Grammarly than it does to actually write the email. So audio is definitely a good thing for me.
There you go. You need that audio transcription thing in Google. You just click the button and start talking.
Yeah, I should get that.
Well, it's only been out for about 20 years, so don't worry. It'll probably you'll catch up at some stage.
Well, I didn't read about it, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think what's the story? Richard Branson went skydiving once and pulled the wrong cord because he's also very dyslexic. So you're in good company there, mate.
Must not do skydiving. Note to self.
Yeah, remember, no skydiving. Well, you've got time. So, mate, tell me, you've got your media career. So you've got your recruitment business. You've got your obviously got your podcast. You're a venture partner and about to be announced as a new venture partner in a new business. And just for kicks, you thought you'd start a media company. So tell me about that.
I have to say, I love the media company. Look, it's pretty new. I guess it stemmed from the podcast. We started the podcast during COVID because it was quiet. And we also started the podcast because we wanted to be able to sell our startups. When you're, my previous recruitment companies had been in government and corporate and so forth, and everybody knew who we were recruiting for. But when we started doing a recruitment company just doing startups, one, the candidate market was very tight. So trying to get someone to leave a perfectly good job to work for a company they didn't know was difficult. So we had to work out how we could really sell that business. And we felt by doing an interview with the founder, no one sells the business better than the founder. We could use that. And so that's why we started the podcast. And, here we are now, 142 shows in, season 5. I love doing it. And I'd never done it before. I was more nervous than you could ever imagine on my first one. Probably more nervous than when I actually went and spoke on stage for the first time as well. I was more nervous doing my first podcast. And I was actually filming 6 in a row because I could only afford to hire the studio for one day. And by the 6th one, I was still nervous. But I really did enjoy it. And so there was a couple of reasons that made me want to start the media company. One is that it was insanely expensive when I was trying to do it. And we had very little money. As I mentioned, I had to hire the studio for the day. So we wanted to bring it to the startup world again, because that's really the ecosystem I play in the most now, and give it to them at an affordable price. So that was the first reason, to be able to give them the ability to use video, which has become so commonplace and so powerful now. But also, I wanted to expand my experience in doing it with my head of content, Hayo, and I. We just started talking, how cool would it be to do documentaries? How cool would it be to film awards? How cool would it be to this? And so we did. And that's sort of what we're doing. And in the first, and when I say new, it's 8 weeks old.
Wow.
We've got 3 documentaries booked in. We are going up to the Northern Territory to film people flying out of helicopters. We're going to film some war games for a military startup. We've got a sort of arty, very fancy dinner that we're doing. We're doing podcasts for people. I'm loving it. And we're doing all these capital raising videos, which I think is the best thing. That's our latest thing we've launched in helping people. It's really, really affordable. I won't quote the price, but we're helping people raise money, which is becoming increasingly difficult. So the number one reason was to really bring it down at an affordable price, because I think that the big production companies just rip you off. Now I know what it costs. They definitely rip you off. And 2, I just wanted to do it. And like I said, I'm 50. It's about time I start doing things I really want to do.
Yeah, fair enough. So just with that, how do you get a gig to go up to the Northern Territory and film somebody jumping out of a helicopter? Is that joined with a startup? Is a startup about high diving or something?
Let's just call it serendipity. I think when you're in recruitment for 25 plus years, you get to meet a lot of people. A lot. I think my daughter worked it out the other day. She's 16, so she loves maths and things, and she worked out that it was something like 2.1 people I've met throughout my career. It was some ridiculous number, right? So you get to meet a lot of people. Those people go off and do a lot of different things. I still love, my number one thing, if you ask me what I love to do, it's meeting people in whatever capacity. and things just come up. Like, who thought I would be filming war games for a military-based startup? Who knew there were military-based startups that you could actually access? I found a whole pool of it just through a random introduction. And I think if you put yourself out there and say, this is what I'm doing, you'd be amazed. And that's exactly what we did. I rang someone that I'd bumped into at an event and just said, we're doing this now. If you know anyone, oh, actually, I know, and bang, 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 bang. And, we're going up to Magnetic Island to film this robot in the water. Where did that come from? I don't know where these things come from. I also read a lot of, and we talked about my dyslexia, I read a lot of newsletters. So I do love reading. I love reading books. It just takes me quite a while, but I read a lot of newsletters, and I sort of speed read. I love learning about what's happening and new things. And so I read a lot of, I guess you call them sort of newsletters that might cover psychedelics or startups or fitness hacks or whatever. And our publishing company, does Balance the Grind. And I read it because I want to put that content into our publishing company, Balance the Grind. But that leads me to reach out to people that I've never met before. You'll be amazed how people respond. I reached out to this guy who advises the UN on artificial intelligence. Just send him a message on LinkedIn. He said, yeah, sure, let's have a chat. And we had a chat on the phone, and now he's going to come on one of our shows. I'd never met him. He's in, I think he's in Brussels. But, I think if you just put yourself out there, you'd be amazed how many people also like to meet people, and amazing things can happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The power of being able to just send out that DM or send out that letter. That's what actually got me started in this business. How I got to meet you. It's these conversations. You go, hey, I want to know this thing, or I'm interested in that thing, and things happen. So in relation to, I guess, to your secrets, or not secrets, but the lessons you've learned from being in the trenches, what are the 2 or 3 things you want to share with people who are out there trying to, run their business, run their life, and of course also, do what you do, sort of chase your dreams of becoming a media magnate?
Don't do the media magnet thing, because I don't need any more competition.
Don't worry. Look, I reckon this whole podcasting thing, online media videos, it's probably a bit of a fad. Don't worry, you'll be open water very soon.
That's a relief.
Yeah, good.
I guess what I learned, I've made, and I'm going to try and say this in a way that doesn't sound cliche, because everyone says it so many times. I think that you just got to not be afraid to make mistakes. I make so many mistakes. I still am. Every week there's things I go, oh my God, seriously? So I think really there's one piece of advice that's more important than anything, and that's you just got to do things. You've just got to do things. I was watching a YouTube show this morning, and it was from what's the name? Her name is Greta Van Riel. That's it, Greta Van Riel. And Greta Van Riel has had 5+ startups, and she says things like, don't wait until it's perfect. If you're happy with the way it looks when it goes out, you've waited too long. All these kinds of statements. And I'm very much in agreement with that. And you can see that by most of the work that we put out that doesn't look that great. You've just got to start doing things, and it's the quickest way to get better. And whatever it is that you're going to do, just get on and do it, and have a crack, and be prepared to take the criticism for putting out bad content, bad videos, bad sales pitches, bad emails, bad everything. My first appearance on talking on stage was dreadful, and I've done it many times since, and it's probably not that much better, but I do feel like it's getting better every time. But I still don't feel I'm anywhere near where I would want to be in my ability to do it. So you just got to do it.
So it is a bit of a cliche to say fail fast. So how do you think about
Yeah, I try really hard not to say that.
I know. It's like, it's sort of, also you want to bring up your network being your net worth as well. That's another good one. But actually, that's probably very true for you with 2.5 million or 2.1 million people that you've met. So when it comes to failing fast, how do you think about that? Is it I'll just give it a go, people won't care? Are you I guess minimizing expectation of yourself or minimizing the expectation of the market?
So one, I don't think it's failing. That's why I don't like the term fail. I don't think anything can fail. My view on failure is when you give it up, right? That's the fail. When you stop doing it, then you if you're still trying and you're still doing it, then you definitely haven't failed. I think it's try fast. It's not fail fast. There's a big difference between that, in my view. I don't see things as failure necessarily. Although I am known for saying that was a fail when I try things, but I think it's more just about trying things. I think I naturally seem to have not a high risk profile, because I don't think that's accurate. I think I have a very optimistic look on life. Very, very optimistic, way too optimistic. That's one of my biggest failings, is that I never think anything won't work. So and it's interesting. I'm reading this, when I say reading, Audible, I'm listening to Stephen Bartlett's book, Diary of a CEO, which is obviously a follow-on from his podcast. And it's super interesting. And he talks about the power of trying to predict failure and then minimizing it before it happens. I'm not very good at that. I was listening to that this morning going, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that, because I go into everything believing it's going to work. I go into everything with very little fear, and that's just my nature. I wish I had more fear. It probably would have saved me a lot of heartache and pain. And I do it in every aspect of my life. It's not just business. It's absolutely everything. And it doesn't work out all the time.
Right.
It certainly works out a lot less than it does work out. But it doesn't stop me. I love trying new things. Maybe I have a very low boredom threshold. Maybe that's ADHD. I don't know. But I don't have a lot of fear, I guess, is probably what I'm trying to say.
Got it. And so when it comes to, we were talking earlier in our previous conversation, we were talking about venture capital, but also venture studios. And you said, oh, don't get me started. So I'm going to get you started. So what do you think about venture studios?
The concept.
Well, first of all, do you want to start with your definition of a venture studio? Because I think out there in the world, there's a bit of confusion about what these incubators are, or venture studios, etc.
Okay. So, I mean, the difference between an incubator and a venture studio, incubator is usually a period of time where you go into a ecosystem and they teach you about or fast track you about what you're trying to do in terms of starting a business, typically in this case we're talking about, right? So they will take away a lot of those early lessons learned and give them to you. So you go in a lot more informed and your chances of success increase without having to go through all those painful lessons. And I think incubators are great. I do think it's sad the way that incubators just push you out into the world after 8 weeks and hope you're okay. And I'm about to start working with an incubator that doesn't do that, because I'm so excited that they actually stay on the journey. And I know a lot of them offer ecosystems and alumni and all this kind of stuff, but I think going from so much full support to none is just too quick a transition. I think it should be slower. That's my opinion on incubators. But I think incubators are amazing. I really do. We work with a lot of them. I just wish they'd take it a bit further, but I also understand funding. There's a lot of reasons why they don't. Venture studios are, in my view, designed to help non-technical founders build technical solutions. Everything these days needs technology. If you want to build a scalable thing in pretty much any kind of domain, you need to have technology. And not everybody has technology skills, but they have great ideas. So you go to a venture studio, they will work in a number of different ways, and some are great and some are not. And you pay them a certain amount of money and they will build that for you, and they may even help you raise money, or they may even invest themselves. So they are a place where you can go and they will take you from there to there if you don't have the skill set to do it. That's the definition of it. What did you want to know about my opinions on them? I think a lot of them are outright crooks.
Tell me about it.
I think there's some amazing ones out there, and I know them, and I think they're great, and I love the way they work. And I'm not going to name any names, but I think a lot of them are really just taking people's money when they're quite clear that there's no chance of success, or very little chance of success, and they're probably overcharging them as well. And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who are uninformed as to what it costs to build things, uninformed as to what good or bad things look like, which is part of what the venture studio should be doing, right? And are left with either a substandard product that they can't do anything with and no money, or that the venture studio takes such a dominant position in them from an equity point of view that they can potentially even take the business over. So I just think, like everything in life, there's a lot of scam artists and crooks in the venture studio space right now, because it's relatively new, maybe 5-6 years. I think they will disappear, and I think the good ones will raise. But right now, I think there's a lot of people being sold the dream that, yes, your app is a great idea, you're going to make millions, and it's just not true. Just give us $100,000 and we'll help you. I hate that.
A friend of mine is going through one at the moment, no names and no court martials once again, but they expected 60%.
So they got control of the business. I mean, that's mental, right? Mental.
Yeah, that seems it seems pretty wild.
Not a supportive environment, is it, for a founder? Here's your idea. We'll take the whole thing over, and we'll take your money to fund it. Where's that? I mean, that's just outrageous.
So if people who are watching this and are looking to scale up their business or take their business to the next level, what are the characteristics of a good venture studio or incubator? What things should people be looking for so they can weed out the ones that they go, well, that we should avoid those ones?
Look, there's one that I won't name names, even though I'm a massive fan of them. These guys will help you build your technical solution, and they'll help you raise money, and potentially they'll take some equity themselves. But they won't take any cash off you until the idea is at a point where it's obvious it's going to work and you're getting some revenue. So they will only back ideas that they genuinely believe are going to work.
So they act like a sort of a VC sort of space. They think they think about the business as what's the potential future of it, and then they put their energy, time, people towards it rather than their money. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they'll help you build that for free to a point until they need to obviously take equity or can take some money from you. But they get you on the ladder with a product and they're not going to do that if it's a stupid idea or if it's never going to work, and they're not going to build you a substandard product because, again, they're doing it for free. So they are basically coming in on the journey with you, a little like a co-founder, which is what a venture studio is supposed to be, and saying, all right, I'm prepared to give up time and money and so forth to help you get this business off. I want something for it in the future, but I'm only going to do it if I believe in it because I'm not getting anything until we make it work. That's a true partnership to me.
Got it. So just changing gear here again, to continue along the theme of network and having other people help you out. What do you think about private clubs and private members clubs?
Did I set you up for that question?
Not at all.
How interesting. I'm about to launch.
I just like doing my research and understanding people that I talk to.
I mean, I've been a member of Cub since it was started, and I think it's been an amazing journey. 8-9 years. Got so much out of that, and that, I mean, I was one of the first members. There wasn't a lot of a club when I joined. There was probably 10-15 people, right? So, and I've seen that evolve into the machine it is today, and I think it's amazing. I think the network of business owners together has been fantastic. Did I tell you I was launching a private club in the next few months? Did you know that?
No.
That's
no, I didn't.
Weird.
Honestly, I like pretend that I do. So my research and my background checks were all about how long you've been involved with Cub. So it was just serendipity, I think.
That's bizarre. Look, Dan and Anthony and their team have done an outstanding job, and I've literally watched it from when we used to just sort of get together and have a chat and some food and some drinks to where it is now. And it's been fascinating to watch. It even inspired me to want to create my own club, which is not in competition of club. And Dan and Ant are both very aware of my new private club that I am going to be launching.
They are now, when this goes live.
We did ask them if they wanted to be involved as well. So, look, I think clubs are great. I don't think we have enough in Australia. Hence, I'm launching one. Mine's quite different to what Club is, but I think the power of community and people is like second to nothing. And I think COVID, it was interesting. A Price Waterhouse study was convinced that communities were going to be the strength of the human race after COVID, and they are quite right. And I think it is. And I think everybody's looking for communities to do things in communities and understands the power of crowds and all those kinds of things that exist in the world. So I'm a big fan. I'm learning as I come closer to launching them. There's a lot of work, so a lot of respect to Dan and Ant. Now I'm realizing how much work there is and how much thought has to go into it and how difficult it is. But like everything else, of course, Matt, I think it's going to succeed because of my insane optimism.
Your default setting of optimism.
And yeah, I wanted to add something else for those few spare hours that I had in the week. But
yeah, that's right.
I'm pretty pumped and excited about what we're going to launch there. And I can't talk about it now, unfortunately, other than watch this space. But I think in the next probably 6 to 8 weeks, you'll start to hear about it.
So can you tell me who's it for? Who's the target customer of this club?
So we realized, and I have 3 other co-founders. We realized a while ago, and it took us about a year to find the right space because I think the space to me is
physical space.
It's a physical space, which is where it's a little bit different to a lot of other clubs that exist because there's a lot of communities that exist. We wanted to have a physical space. And what we realized is there's this, and everyone talks about this in the news, there's this large shift of wealth happening at the moment from the older generations to probably to my generation, even though I consider myself a little bit older. And that generation wants to invest in different things. If you look to probably the prior generation, to me, it was very much around fixed assets like property and shares and things like that, right? Not that shares are fixed, but I think now there's a desire to invest not only in technology, but also within the environment and sustainability projects and energy projects and things that are going to change the world. And a lot of those people who are inheriting that wealth don't necessarily have the networks to do that. So the point of this club is to bring together those communities, is to bring together proven sort of thought leaders and entrepreneurs with the generation that's inheriting a lot of the wealth to make sure that we can build the next generation of Australian companies. You know, we've got our Atlassians, we've got our Canvas, we've got our safety cultures. Well, why don't we have 30 of those, 50 of those, 100 of those? We've got all this amazing sort of climate tech ecosystem going on in Australia around how we're going to save the planet, how we're going to save the environment, what we're going to do with energy. That needs money. And I think that a lot of those people who are inheriting that money want to invest in that space. So the real purpose of the club was to bring those two communities together. There's more to it than that, but that was where the initial idea, so that Australia can become an absolute powerhouse in pumping out more Canvas and pumping out some of the most dynamic and, I guess, exciting projects that are going to happen in the world and not be so far behind the UK, Europe, and the US anymore.
The whole private club thing, I joined one in Brisbane a little while ago before COVID, and it was absolutely brilliant. Incredible wine cellar and really interesting people, and just the opportunities that I got of being part of that was absolutely fantastic. So even though I live on the Gold Coast now, and there's none that I know of that are local that I would want to go to, unless, of course, the clubs that'll have me I don't want to be part of, and the clubs that won't have me, they're the ones I do want to be part of, I guess. As I think Groucho Marx said that. So you've created your own. Well done. So when it comes to the founders and people that you're working with and trying to attract into your club, and also part of your venture and recruitment, so what are the main characteristics of CEOs that you're looking for and your partners are looking for when looking to help companies scale?
It's an interesting question. I guess if you look at all of my businesses, they all sort of interfeed into each other, right? They're all within the same kind of thing. They're all intertwined. There's nothing that's really random on the outside. This year, and I say I still do recruitment, I have done a lot of CEO roles this year. We're at a period of time where valuations are extremely low, funding is very hard to come by, private equity is cashed up. So there's a lot of private equity companies buying up Australian businesses, particularly US private equity firms. And I'm talking about the little ones that no one's ever heard of. And they're coming in, they're buying businesses 8 to 12 million annual recurring revenue, and they're going to want to scale them, and they're either going to sell them or they're going to pull them together, right? So there's a lot of that happening.
I've got three clients on my roster who are owned by overseas or large VCs, and they've been told to, grow. So I don't have a huge roster, but of the customers I have, 3 of them got outside money in them.
And I think that's the difference between private equity and VC. Is VC will sort of fund you to grow. Private equity will typically replace the founders. Most founders leave when not always, but most do. And the private equity will replace the whole team. It depends. There's certainly situations.
Okay. Interesting distinction you've made there. I haven't made that distinction. So yeah, some of them, 2 of them are private equity, 1 of them is VC under that definition.
Yeah, I mean, venture capital firms will give you money and they'll try and help you to a point, but that's really not their job. Their job is to give you the venture to grow, and they will advise and so forth. And they might sit on a board. But private equity tends to buy the whole business, or definitely a controlling share in the business, and then they will usually. I guess the best company for a private equity firm to buy is somewhere where the founders may be tapped out in terms of their abilities to grow it anymore, and they need to professionalize that business, bring in CEOs, structures, all those kinds of things, right? So we've done, I think, 9 CEO roles. I've actually done 9 CEO roles, and I have 3 more that I'm working at the moment. So I'm meeting a lot of CEOs this year, a lot of CEOs, more than I've ever met.
So does the personality trait change? So I'll get back to the question in a second, but just following that thread, does the personality trait change between early stage startup CEO and businesses that you're recruiting for? I'm going to assume the businesses you're recruiting for are more established and have been around for a lot longer. And I guess I should ask the question: are they more established? And is it more of a senior role?
They are. I guess. Look, we talk a lot about this I talk a lot about this in recruitment. In that when you go to work for a startup or scale up, depending on how you define them, the traits of the people that work in that business change consistently, right? The people that are there in the beginning should probably not be there at the end. There'll be some that make that journey, but very few can work through that whole journey. At the beginning, you need to be able to do anything, create things from nothing, love ambiguity, like doing lots of variety of things, not really be restricted by wanting to get things right. As the business grows, it completely changes, right? And then you need people who are very specific, who want to get things perfectly right. And so you have this big transition of staff, not just CEOs. And most founders cannot do that whole journey. There are ones that can, but most need to bring in a CEO at some stage or bring in a leadership team and go into more of an ambassador role or more of a non-operational role. Founders are good at starting something from nothing, 0 to 1, as they call it, and potentially 0 to 5. But very few can take that whole journey. It's a completely different set of skills. It's a completely different personality. And most founders don't enjoy. I particularly do not enjoy companies as they get bigger. I like I like the super early stage. I can't work in the later stages. I'm not detailed enough. I don't think that way. It's not enjoyable for me. But there's a lot of people who can't do the early stage. So you just have to understand where you as a person are, or what that business needs if you're recruiting that role.
Got it. Yeah, we grew our business to about 70 people, and that was, whilst it was the most financially rewarding time of my life, it was also the time in which I found myself the most stressed and at the same time bored. We built a second story so we had the third floor of a 4-story building. We took over the fourth. We decked it out, spending an outrageous amount of money decking out the executive suites and all that sort of stuff. People go, well, a curved wall here is going to be very expensive, and of course my ego was out of control. And I'm having a curved wall, make it curved. So make all the walls curved almost. And I want sliding pocket glass doors, just stuff that every engineer and that have tried to advise me was saying this is crazy. But when you're under 30 and doing very, very well, I was certainly wanted things a certain way. So, but I put myself into that corner office, which is all very nice, all great furniture, and I sat there and I remember tapping my pen, going, "What do I do now?" Because I've always just been the sales guy. I've always led from the corner. I haven't had a corner office. I had the corner desk in the sales room. And so you're absolutely right. The difference in personality between me starting my first business at 22 and by the time 29 came around, we had all these people and 6 different businesses and the corner office. So I solved it. I solved it by picking my wife and my 1-year-old son up. We moved to New Zealand and opening a sales office of my own company, essentially in competition with my own company. And I had a box of leads, got on the phones again. So
that was the right decision.
It was the right decision, man. I absolutely loved that.
From Finder. So he did exactly the same thing, right? As Finder had this outrageous amount of success, he found himself completely lost. And so he went over to the US and opened it up and did exactly the same thing. And I think, if you are that founder, that's a great way to realign your skills. Launch a new product line, go and get into a new market, or do what I do, start your next company and just keep starting them. But you have to do what you enjoy, and you have to do what you're good at. And if you can combine them, fantastic. But if you're sitting there doing a job you hate, and I was the same. If I look at the business that I was in prior to Nudge, it got quite big, probably got 45 people on. It was massive turnover. I hated the last few years. I really hated it. Did not enjoy it at all. And I found myself becoming self-destructive almost, doing things that were not beneficial to the business, not consciously, but just because I almost wanted to create problems so that I could go and solve them, because that's what I like doing.
Right.
Ridiculous, utterly ridiculous.
Can you give me an example?
I'm probably not going to give you an example with that business. My departure from that business, from my last business partner, suffered greatly because of that trait of mine and traits of his as well. And unfortunately, I'd known that individual a very long time, and we don't really converse at all anymore, which is a shame because we were very close at one stage. And I think that was both of our faults. And I think we both, I don't know, we were relatively young. These things, it's another learning experience. Those learning experiences that we talked about earlier, they're still rolling in every week. Don't worry.
Yeah,
but
that's it.
Probably one of the biggest ones, and probably one of the ones that had the most impact on me, because I lost a very close friend that I'd had for many, many years, which is, it's part of life. Who knows? Maybe that will rekindle one day. I doubt it, but you never know.
Right. Well, my father said to me, and I don't know if it was actually his quote, but you either win or learn. And I found myself learning a lot over the years. Certainly after continually being the salesperson, you learn from almost every deal. So, mate, overall, the personality of an established CEO, what's that look like?
Well, again, this is a debatable point, because do you mean established as in a listed business, or do you mean established as in a corporate, or do you mean established as in a small and medium? I guess when you work in startups, pretty much anything that's profitable is almost considered established.
Right.
So again, even once you get out of startup phase, there's levels, right? And a CEO of a listed company is very, very different to the CEO of just a profitable corporate or a profitable SME. And there are SMEs that make as much profit as corporates. So it changes all the time. And I think common sense really tells you, when you consider the business, what it is. But I think if we're talking generalistically, a CEO of a larger, more successful business job is to sell the business, but at the same time, enable all the people that they've hired to be able to do their jobs in the easiest and most effective manner. You are really, and there's the irony of this, right? You're a recruiter. As a CEO, you are a recruiter, because your job is to hire the best team and then enable them to do their jobs. That's what you do as a CEO. That is essentially the definition of recruiter, without perhaps the last part. So everyone becomes a recruiter in the end if they become a successful CEO. No one ever wants to admit that, because no one likes recruiters, right?
Right. Well, mate, look, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you so much for getting into it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about the club. Can you even tell us what the name is?
What club?
There is no club?
When's the?
This is not the club you're looking for.
How long is before this comes out? You have to tell me, right? So that'll
about a week or so.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Okay.
Just if everyone wants to follow me on LinkedIn, it'll be on there. Just find me on LinkedIn, click follow, and you'll see the announcement probably in about 6 weeks' time.
Got it. And I'll make sure that in the show notes that your the link to your LinkedIn is there, and also links to media company. If you happen to have a helicopter you need to jump out of and get that filmed, I'll make sure Steve is the man on the spot for you as well.
The good news is you can just put the Nudge Group link, because all the other companies you can find through the Nudge Group website. So you don't have to have hundreds of links there. So I've made it easy for you.
So we could sort of join 2024 and say link in bio or something like that.
Something like
that. Mate, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. You have a great day. Bye for now.
Thanks, mate.